Good, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Brescher, and I am a relationship manager for TrainingPros. And I want to thank you all for registering for our second Learning Views webinar, a series that we are sponsoring. TrainingPros is sponsoring with Harrisburg University. So I will just tell you just a quick 30-second overview about myself. I am a relationship manager in the New Jersey, New York city markets primarily, although I do work across the country as well. I have a fairly strong background in financial services and insurance, and I specialize myself in a lot of leadership development. I do a lot of coaching in my own practice as well. I am on the board for ATD, which was formerly known as ASTD here in the North Jersey chapter, and I am the Vice President of Professional Development. So I am very pleased and honored to be kicking off our second webinar for all of you. So let me tell you a little bit about our partnership, TrainingPros' partnership with Harrisburg University. We are partnering on these webinar series because we want to share the latest developments that we are observing with our clients and to demonstrate how Harrisburg University is able to provide a master's level program to professionals who want or need to pursue an advanced degree in the learning technology space. TrainingPros is the leading provider of contract L&D talent in the U.S. We provide
Thank you, Diane. This is Andy Petrosky, everyone. I'll be your presenter for today. We seem to have lost Diane for a second there, and I'm not receiving her audio feed anymore.
There we go.
I think we'll I think we'll just move forward. That's all right. I think we'll just move forward with the session for today, and we'll have some other opportunities to talk a little bit or show you some information about TrainingPros at the end of the session. So sorry about that, Diane, but I wasn't quite sure what technical difficulties we had run into there and didn't want to wait any longer.
It just dropped. Sorry. Yeah.
No problem. So we'll move on here. I just want to add, in addition to Diane was going to share some of my roles at Harrisburg University. One of the things that I do is to coordinate the Learning Technologies Master of Science program and teach in the program at the university, and Diane introed that program a little bit. In addition to coordinating and teaching in the LTMS program at Harrisburg University, I also work with the faculty here to help them integrate technology, including collaborative learning, into their courses. And I also work on social learning and digital collaboration projects with clients through our Center for Advanced Entertainment and Learning Technologies. As part of our Learning Technologies program, we have a couple of courses in that program that focus on social learning and collaborative learning, collaborative online learning. So that's kind of introductions to get us started. The only other housekeeping item I want to touch base on actually is the Q&A pod that now has appeared on the left side of the screen under the participants list. That's a space where you can enter more detailed questions or questions that you want to keep track of that are specifically related to the session today. So any technical issues that you're having, you can type in the text chat, or any comments that you have, certainly type in the text chat as well. You can also type your questions in the text chat, and I will address those as we break at different times throughout the session. But the Q&A space is a space for more detailed questions or, again, questions that you want to highlight. So with that, let's move forward here and get things kicked off. We asked you to note your reason for attending the webinar when you initially registered. This word cloud is a representation of the types of answers that were provided by the 110 plus folks that registered for this webinar. Overall, everyone is looking for new ideas and techniques to enhance their current training program, and that's no surprise. There are also a few who are launching a social learning effort currently or in 2015. So majority of people are just wanting to learn a little bit more, and then there are a few that are in specific initiatives either right now or in the coming new year. But in general, most are looking for general overview and insights into social learning. So that's what we're going to do today. But without knowing your prior knowledge and each individual person's prior knowledge, it's hard to address everyone's specific needs. So what we're going to do today is do the best we can with addressing everyone's need by looking at a few case studies, and hope to provide value to everyone by looking at those case studies, both the less experienced and the more experienced folks. So though this session has been designed although this session has been designed with the assumption that everyone understands a basic definition of social learning. So we're not going to start at the beginning, but we are going to take a broad overview look at things. So we'll be focusing on an overview and introductory insights into social learning goals and strategies in today's session, including a look at some specific case studies and how they might inform some of your thinking about social learning. We'll also look at implementation considerations and talk a little bit about measurement. And some of the implementation and measurement considerations or ideas or concepts are within the case studies themselves as well, but we'll also try to take a little bit of time at the end and address those specific components of a social learning implementation. Social media and social learning has been an established practice for a while now, so we're not going to, like I said, define social learning at its core or at its foundation, but if you are just getting started with social learning, you will get a better sense of it when we look at some of the case studies. So the first place we want to start really is why. Why are you looking at a social learning solution, or why should you be? And consider some reasons why these learning solutions or a social learning solution can be a viable alternative for you, or a viable path. So let me ask you that question. Why should you, or why are you considering social learning for training? And if you can just type your thoughts in the text chat. I'd like to get an idea of where everyone is regarding their motivation, their impetus, their goals for any social learning activities that you're thinking of undertaking, or again, for some of you that are underway. So there are a few comments coming through the text chat here. Busy professionals, reaching them multiple times, younger generations. Some comments around expectations. Again, some people are just exploring. Okay, and Sean indicates stickiness of learning. So continue to type those text chat or your thoughts there in the text chat, and in the meantime, we'll take a look at some things that are kind of buzzwords or ideas in the learning industry, or challenges in the learning industry that may be things that you have seen before, and some may consider reasons or goals for implementing social learning. So are any of these reasons to begin a social learning solution or a social learning implementation? Mario says yes. Okay, so a couple of folks think that a few of them are, but maybe not all of them. Mark says absolutely. I love your conviction there, Mark. Okay, so most folks are chiming in yes. And Michelle, you're kind of beginning to head down the path where I'd like us to go, which is, sure, these can be considerations for social learning implementation, but not the only reasons, and these certainly aren't goals. These aren't things that you would necessarily be able to measure outcomes on, especially from the standpoint of business performance. They are considerations, they're drivers, they're things, some of them are trends that may get us thinking in the direction of social learning, but certainly we want to think beyond these buzzwords and these phrases that people are throwing around in the industry as reasons for moving forward with social learning, but certainly we need to dive a little bit deeper. So with that in mind, let's think a little bit about what are some drivers and why should we be thinking about social learning as a learning solution and as something we may want to begin implementing and designing into learning solutions, both online, blended, and various employee engagement solutions as well. So one reason we should really think about social learning outside of the standpoint of specific goals of the organization is really thinking back to learning theory. Both constructivist and social learning theories support the use of social learning as a tool to extend our reflection and connections that we make in learning environments. In fact, in constructivism, a tenet is that we really don't learn anything until we share what we've learned with someone else. And social learning in this context doesn't have to be something that is driven digitally, but with the time being a factor, location being a factor, that's really the type of thing that we're looking at, is how do we expand learning outside of that learning event and do that digitally as a way of convenience and efficiency, and have that impact learning outcomes. And again, learning, there are a number of learning theories that support the use of social learning tools or social learning as an activity that really expands learning impact and beyond just time, but actually with increased learning and increased understanding and reflection on what we're learning and how others are interpreting that same learning. So learning theories are a component of why we should think about social learning solutions. In addition, no specific studies to cite, but in general, we probably can reflect back on our own experiences, and a number of leaders in instructional design, as well as the learning theories that I just mentioned, certainly support the fact that workplace learning can be enhanced when peer sharing, discussion, collaboration, or critique are present. And those are just general instructional design strategies, and we certainly design a lot of those into our formal learning solutions. But how can we take advantage of social learning as a way of expanding those learning strategies and instructional strategies? So that should be something that goes into our goals or our perspective around social learning and its impact on learning. And then certainly social learning is an opportunity to impact memory. When we think about, and do that through repeated experiences, when we think about memory and the loss, the retention rate of formal learning, and about 80% of what students experience or learners experience in a formal learning session being lost, and really them only remembering about 20% of that if we're lucky. And obviously that depends on your full learning solution, depends on the content, depends on the learners and the application environment. But in general, formal learning has a very low retention rate, and we can look to extend or expand and improve the impacts of learning solutions through social learning. So those are some brain-based or some instructional strategy-based reasons why we should be thinking about social learning. But there are obviously also organizational initiatives, organizational needs, and organizational perspectives that should be considered as part of thinking about the impact that social learning can have. And what I have on screen here are the 6 C's: creation, curation, communication, connections, culture, and collaboration. What I'd like to do now is actually switch layouts, and as I talk a little bit about each of these, would like you guys to type in the designated chat areas some ideas that you have, or examples that you have, or needs that you have in your organization, or clients that you work with related to each of these areas. So as we talk about creation, we're referencing things like blogs and discussion forums and videos where learning can be extended or expanded. The communication among creators can be improved, and it's also an opportunity to address misconceptions and inaccurate information when we're thinking about the creation of common understanding in the workplace. So if you will, if you have examples or ideas or needs, again, within your organization or organizations that you work with, please type in that creation text chat any of those ideas or needs or specific examples that you might have. When we talk about creation, we're referring to collecting content, tagging it, evaluating it, potentially remixing existing content into new content. So this may be something like repositories of resources that can be easily searched based on tags that are presented by a curator or tags that are presented by the community. Curation may also be something like the Facebook like button. So something where people are indicating either through stars or through likes that this is a piece of information or resource that is valuable. Communication is pretty self-explanatory, but in this case we're talking about communication efficiency. In a McKinsey Global Institute report on the use of social technology in the workplace, they found that social learning communication reduced email by 21%, reduced meetings by 16%, and reduced time to find knowledge by 34%. So think about some ways in which communication or through social learning could impact your organization, or again, any examples that you have or potential needs that you have. Connections are related, as Sean has indicated here, related to bringing people together and connecting experts. And connecting experts at the right time, in the right context, and doing that fairly easily. Connections also enable opportunities to mentor others, and we'll actually highlight that in one of the case studies that we'll look at a little bit later. And an opportunity to build robust teams, which again, one of the case studies references the benefit of robust worldwide team development through connections in social learning. Culture is that opportunity for everyone to identify those shared best practices, communicate in a shared language, and really to make sharing and communication a part of the culture. As we move into a much more digital business environment and social business environment, that's not always an easy move or an easy transition for some organizations, especially ones that tend to be very siloed and very information security heavy, where having the information is the power in the information. Moving to an organization where sharing information is the power in the organization can have, can be a big leap. And so social learning tools can potentially help certainly facilitate that movement to sharing, but also facilitate the culture change by having an open and ongoing dialogue about that culture change. And collaboration, again, is pretty self-explanatory, but collaboration with social learning tools makes that collaboration more efficient, more dynamic, and more sustainable as well, and also more documented. So thank you guys for sharing some of your thoughts and ideas here. Let's take a look just briefly. I'm going to take a look at some of the comments that were shared, and others in the session would love to get your feedback and thoughts on some of these opportunities as well, or any questions that you have about any of them. You can type in the specific designated areas here, chat areas, or type in the general chat at the bottom of the screen. So Jeff, there definitely is a need for training and management of how to use these tools, and we'll talk a little bit about that regarding implementation and get to that in some of the case studies. And Michelle, certainly repurposing instructor-led training or even more traditional e-learning could be a way to do content creation in social learning, as well as considering opportunities for the learners themselves to be content creators in those learning experiences. And Edie, definitely, group reflection and peer reflection on, formal learning experiences or that are company-wide, or even formal learning experiences that were maybe only experienced by a part of the group and can be shared out, certainly would be a great way of creating additional value, creating additional content in the organization. And as with any categorization, there are certainly hard lines between the chat areas here in the webinar, but these are blurred lines. So things that are in creation could certainly be communication or collaboration as well in a lot of cases, and there's a number of different combinations there. Curation, certainly there's a need for a shared taxonomy within the organization. So when you're thinking about tagging, what does impactful mean? What does engineering mean? What does training mean when you're tagging something? What impact will that have on search capabilities, as well as how people interpret those tags? Certainly is something you need to consider, Edie. As with Jeff, certainly some governance or some strategies around how we're going to manage all of this is a consideration. As part of that, one of the major considerations with social learning compared to more formal learning opportunities or initiatives is that there needs to be a shared governance of that, and certainly any social learning initiative that can be driven from the bottom up, ultimately, or at least include bottom up elements of the social learning initiative, have benefits and opportunities for more sustainable and greater amount of success. The more you can involve the audience or the employees or the learners into the building of the system and the sustainability of the system, the better you are. And I don't want to spend too much more time on this, so I'm going to just head down to connections and culture real quick, since communication and collaboration are, again, pretty self-explanatory, and we'll certainly see examples of those in the case studies. Lisa, thanks for sharing your experience with a writer support group on Facebook. Certainly that could be something that you could extrapolate into a learning organization or a business regarding policies or regarding proposals. A variety of different scenarios there could fit into what you're describing. And Kathy and Pam, those are definitely some considerations around culture, opportunities to increase technology skills with just the use and implementation of social learning, something that people are going to be using on a daily basis, or the expectations are going to be that they're going to be using them on a daily basis. Okay, and I think we indicated content collection and management in curation. Again, that could be a culture element as well. Okay, so that begins to get us thinking a little bit more about some of the goals of social learning and some of the potential outcomes, and what needs within an organization a social learning initiative can meet, in addition to how social learning can impact the effectiveness of more traditional learning solutions. Again, whether those are in the classroom or whether they're more traditional e-learning. And it's interesting to call anything or reference something as traditional e-learning, but certainly we've been doing e-learning long enough that there are certainly common ways of doing it and common solutions that certainly can be expanded upon by the use of social learning. So now we're going to take a look at a few of the social learning case studies that I've been referencing to consider what others are doing and how they've found success. This will also further define what social learning is, or what it can be, and the opportunities it presents. At least that's the goal moving forward here for you. So there's 3 potential case studies. One is with BASF, which is a science and engineering firm. The other is with CA, or Computer Associates, which is a technology organization. And then Comcast, which is media and entertainment. And for those of us in the Pennsylvania area and the Northeast, Comcast, well, really globally, I guess Comcast should be a common name. May or may not be your cable provider, but media and entertainment company. So we're not going to have a chance to look at all 3 of these, I don't believe. But that being the case, what I'd like to do is give you a choice of which ones you would like to take a look at. And we'll hopefully take a look at the top 2. And I'm trying to get this out of the way of the descriptions, but that's not working so well. So let me do this. All right, so Comcast is the winner, and then a close tie between BASF and CA. I think I will highlight the BASF case study. That one's a little bit more in depth. So anyway, thank you guys for participating in that. And let's take a look at the Comcast case study then. So I have the links out to the more detailed case studies on the screen at the beginning of each case study, but those are also in a resources section that will be available at the end of today's session. Okay, so Comcast is geographically dispersed, certainly, with about 100,000 employees working in 39 different states. 5,000 of those employees are frontline supervisors. With thousands of frontline supervisors spread across the U.S. and growing rapidly, Comcast University knew that it needed to be creative in order to ensure that their high-quality supervisor training, which was in the classroom, would be able to keep pace with the company's tremendous growth and maintain the levels of service needed for the leadership community in Comcast. And their goal was to have the supervisor training within 90 days of the supervisor starting their position. And again, at the beginning, they were doing that in a instructor-led training environment. So their goal was to adapt the in-person Principles of Leadership course to be facilitated in a virtual social learning environment, enabling the new supervisor onboarding or training to happen in a timely fashion regardless of location. So you can imagine the difficulty in onboarding new supervisors, and many of you may be in this situation or in this position, the difficulty of onboarding new supervisors and getting them into an instructor-led training within 90 days of which was took a couple days, which was in training itself was a few days. So a few days out of the office within 90 days of starting their supervisory role. So part of their implementation included bringing company leaders and regional managers together to discuss the business case. And so, early on we talked a little bit about goals for social learning, and certainly as with any learning solution or learning operation, those things, those initiatives should be attached to business goals and a business case made for moving in that direction, so it can be connected to performance in the workplace and ultimately business results as part of measurement. The same company leaders participated in a pilot of the program as auditors so that they could see the program in action, give input along the way, and if they saw value in the new program, ultimately be the ambassadors to communicate the success of the program. So right away in the pilot, they were thinking about how they're going to launch this out to a wider audience. And you'll see a pilot program as a common thread throughout these case studies. They implemented a communication plan as well to explain the proposed program and emphasize the primary advantage that would be most meaningful to the managers. So the communication plan primarily went to the managers of the supervisors, and that most meaningful message to them is that their new frontline supervisors would be able to participate in the new program without having to sacrifice those entire work days of training. And it actually was 2 entire work days. I indicated 4 at the beginning there. They also created a train the trainer experience for the virtual online instructors that were part of this program that were transitioning from the instructor-led environment, and they required learners to complete a technology orientation. So, and you'll see that a lot in social learning initiatives, that there is a technology orientation component that oftentimes is in a more traditional learning environment, and including the fact that that training may actually take place in a classroom. Depends on your audience and, again, their technology proficiency and the ability to, to implement that type of classroom training. So the functions of this system included, or this solution included, virtual instructor-led training. So really something like what we're doing here. And if you think about it, this is a social learning environment. We're doing chat, there's Q&A. At the beginning of the session, we had a number of people connecting with one another. So there could be a number of other things that we could do outside of this more didactic kind of presentation space that could support social learning. And so virtual instructor-led training was a part of their solution. They also had a space to enable, asynchronous collaboration, access to content, robust online classroom management environment for instructors so they could easily coordinate, a single learning portal for easy access by learners, and intermittent 1 hour self-study work with an hour and a half live on learning. So there was pre and post work, there was formal synchronous sessions, and there were informal or asynchronous kind of self-paced sessions as well. Lisa, that is a good question regarding the technology training. In this case, there was not a way for them to opt out, and I don't have knowledge of the specifics of the technology training to see if there were I believe that was an asynchronous solution, so people could, if they did have experience, go through it, at their own pace, and those with more experience could certainly do it a little quicker. But I'm not sure about that question. But that is something to consider. My recommendation would probably be that it isn't something that people should be able to opt out of, but certainly there should be ways for people who are more experienced to be able to go through it a little quicker. Because even though they may have some technology experience and may even have it in the specific tools that you're using, they may not have that experience using the tools the way you want them to use them for that specific initiative. So thanks for that question. That's great. The technology that was used in this case is Blackboard, which was the content management system, or the tool they use for their content management system. WebEx, Intercall, which is just a conferencing tool that was used in conjunction with WebEx and individually for conference calls, and then SharePoint was used as a document repository for this particular piece. So what were some things they looked at on how to sustain this operation, and that's something you should consider as part of social learning implementations or initiatives, is what is the sustainability. And you aren't always looking at something that is going to be sustainable for the foreseeable future. You may have a very focused and very specific goal-oriented maybe initiative related to a project or a program. Your social learning initiative might be that you only want to sustain for a period of time. But regardless, how are you going to get people once they're engaged? How are you going to keep them engaged and continue the progress that you've achieved? So in this case, the new supervisors, managers, are more involved in the process by keeping them in the communication loop of their supervisors' participation in the program. They're also invited to attend the orientation sessions, and they're encouraged to take the actual course themselves. In this case, again, the fact that they don't have to leave the office for 2 days gives the opportunity for the managers to actually participate as well. So John, the format for the learners to practice communication and leadership skills online was through the virtual online sessions like what we're doing now. And again, I don't have the details of the specifics of the training session. This is a publicly available case study, and they didn't share obviously the minute details of what they were doing. But like what we're doing here, in smaller groups, we could enable your audio and video for attendees, and there could be some online role playing and online practice as a part of this. Michelle, yes, the 2 days were full training days as part of this. And here are some of the outcomes or results. So they met their goal of timeline and location challenges for 90 days. They found that there was no change in the quality of learning between the two programs. And actually as a result of this, they have launched multiple other training programs in a similar fashion. And even more impactful, especially from a cultural standpoint, they have centralized their training operations at Comcast. So this was a number of years ago. This case study took place, and since then they have now realized the benefit of a centralized approach to especially virtual training solutions, and have centralized their training operations. So they met their goal of enabling that training within the time frame regardless of location. So based on what you know here, what do you think, or which of the 6 C's do you think were addressed as a part of this Comcast case study? And considering that, again, these categories have certainly blurred lines or even intersecting lines, I think the things that probably stand out most are curation, collaboration, and culture. So curation would certainly be just the management of the resources all in one location, which was something that would be new compared to being given handouts in a classroom scenario. The collaboration between certainly the participants themselves and not having location be a primary consideration for that, or time in the classroom and it being spread out over a period of time. That collaboration, I think, enhanced based on it being something that took place over a period of time versus concentrated in 2 days. Also, the collaboration with the managers. And then certainly we talked about the culture aspect of this. And Lisa, yeah, I think you could even say that all 6 of these were certainly present in this. So Corey, they measured their outcomes based on what we see on screen here. That the fact that the Principles of Leadership program was met within the goal of having supervisors take that training within the first 90 days, regardless of location, was met. And they saw that as impacting business outcomes, because if the supervisors can have that training within the early part of their new role as a supervisor, that means better chance of success. And that also that the quality was not sacrificed for the benefit of being able to bring people in virtually and not have to have them out of the office, and then also have them travel for those 2 days. And then obviously there are cost savings related to that as well, regarding being out of the office, and then also the travel that's included with that. Corey, yeah, that would be an assumption. Again, in this publicly available case study, those details were not shared. And then there are also a lot of other details in the case study. It's a pretty comprehensive case study that you can link out to and read a little bit more about, in case I've missed any of them here, and kind of summarizing what they did and what some of the results were. You bet. And again, those case studies are available at the beginning of, or the links out to the full case study are available at the beginning of each case study in the first slide, and then I'll have links out as well to the case studies at the end when we share some other resources. Okay, so want to take a look at the BASF case study as our next one here. And BASF is a chemical company with 6 energy sites and approximately 380 additional production sites worldwide, 110,000 plus employees. And there's the link out to the case study for this one. And BASF's goal was a little bit more around employee engagement in general, from the standpoint of wanting to advance virtual networking and employee and collaboration inside the organization in a coherent corporate network. So they actually had some social learning happening in their organization organically, but found that they wanted to pursue the benefits of having that be something that was very driven organizationally, and also had purpose and goals and organizational perspective, versus it just being for a single work group or a single area of the organization. So they took advantage of what was being done organically and really looked at moving it to a company-wide implementation. Their implementation involved an interdisciplinary team with that combination of top-down and bottom-up, and so that is something you definitely want to consider as part of social learning implementation. And I think BASF probably has the right idea here in regards to a mixture of it being a top-down initiative, but also something that comes from the bottom up and really begins by meeting the needs of the learners and being driven by the organization and the learners themselves. Top-down initiatives really have a huge top-down only initiatives really have a huge challenge in front of them. I guess depending on the existing culture of the organization. And again, they ran a pilot that included senior management and a number of other stakeholders to really buy into the idea of Connect BASF before they launched completely, and also to pilot the program and give feedback based on their perspective. The functions of this case study are pretty vast, actually, at being an employee engagement case study that was company-wide. So I'm going to page through a few of these here and just kind of highlight what is available. When you have the recording, you'll be able to take a look at these screens, pause, and take a look at these screens a little bit more in depth. But users were able to create a profile. They could search and connect with colleagues via contacts, similar to Facebook or LinkedIn. And they could report status as well to their network. And this was based on not, I'm at the coffee shop, but things that I'm working on at the moment or questions that I have at the moment. There were a lot of search features around being able to connect with profiles, and also search was helpful with navigating the site. They included keyword tags as definitely a part of their initiative and as a way to help employees find information and connect in the community. They created communities of like-minded folks, but they did this in from a variety of different perspectives regarding what groups of like-minded folks and how they connected, and I'll share that in a little bit with you. They included blogs as key communication tools. They had employee discussion forums. Employees were able to bookmark resources and share those with other colleagues. And you can read there how wikis were used as well. And the technology they used for this solution was IBM Connections, and I have a link out to IBM Connections there, and will also be it'll be in the resources list. And there are a list of few of the things that you can do with IBM Connections. And as Edie indicates, definitely staying platform agnostic for a number of different reasons, and can share some things in addition to IBM Connections that might be able to work with Salesforce. I'm not terribly familiar with Salesforce and all the things that can connect with it and work with it, but I do understand it's a pretty dynamic platform, and would imagine that a number of the things that I'll share today can be connected with Salesforce, or may already, that connection may already be established. And then Mary, thanks for sharing your experience with Solvay Pharmaceuticals, now Abbott, that participated or implemented a very similar type of solution. Would love to get your insight, Mary, on your thoughts on that solution and its impact and its sustainability. So if you can, I'm not asking for much for you to share in the text chat there, of course, give us the whole story, but if you can just note a few items and a few thoughts about your experience with that, that would be great. So talking about sustainability, they incorporated a launch campaign that actually had a huge marketing effort behind it to get people involved. They also provided online and offline support. So in this case, regarding employee training, they provided that support kind of in conjunction with the launch. So people could get support as the solution was being implemented, but even afterwards, and that support could be online or offline. And they also practice active community engagement by having community managers that promote the active utilization of the network in a variety of ways, including, again, live face-to-face sessions where the community is promoted, as well as there are some training on how to use the community, or some sharing of the benefits that have been a result of the community. So in this case, in this employee engagement case, there were more than 35,000 employees who are registered as Connect BASF users. Now they have 100,000 plus employees, so about a third of the organization. But I'm not sure. Again, it being a public case study, I don't have privy as to what their target was, but they noted 35,000 as a success for them. And a bigger success was the number or the percentage of community members or the percentage of users or registered people who are also active in communities or community members, and they consider that a good sign of active utilization. And they have a number of specific results regarding communities. One of the things that I can share, two things I'll share here are corporate initiatives and corporate units. They have partitioned out into communities of engagement, and these communities are founded by the organization itself, so they are top-down driven to facilitate dialogue with employees. Those responsible for corporate strategic initiatives use these forums to talk to interested employees, so there's a two-way communication there about initiatives. Service units present their offerings and receive feedback as a part of that, and managers invite their divisional employees to articulate their views and use the community structure as a means of making corporate decisions transparent. In the communities of practice, where work groups and project teams work together, these communities are set up by the organizational units to serve the organization, and the main thrust of those is collaboration. To ensure that specific business goals are achievable, the activities need to be integrated in the most effective possible way in the business processes. And one example of doing this was a community of practice that was set up by a team whose task was to evaluate various external service providers and select the most suitable ones for a novel service. And the members of this team were from 4 continents. Excuse me, guys, just had to get a drink there real quick and clear my throat. So again, the measurement here is mainly in employee engagement, but you can also apply measurement to, or consider measurement within the cost savings and the efficiency of connecting a team from 4 continents into the selection and the systematic selection of a novel service. So I also have the CA case study out on the, I'll have that, I'm sorry, in the resources section of the webinar here as we move to another layout a little bit later on. So you guys can take a look at all 3 of those in a little bit more detail as I'll share those resources. These case studies were all from large companies or large organizations. At Harrisburg University, we have about 60 faculty teaching classes in a semester, including adjunct and professional education faculty. So we're a small organization ourselves compared to the bigger ones we just read about or learned about a little bit. While there's a small portion of the full-time faculty that get together for governance meetings, even getting the full-time on-site group together is a challenge. Not to mention there are 45 plus faculty who are not on campus on a regular basis or at all if they are teaching an online program. So we built LearnHU as a hub for faculty development and conversation. LearnHU is built on our Moodle platform and includes content sharing, discussion forums, faculty profiles, and a variety of other ways that faculty can access resources, share best practices, and connect with one another on an ongoing basis. I don't have a detailed case study on what we've done here at Harrisburg University other than to say that discussions about teaching and learning have increased and extended beyond formal meeting and training sessions as a result of this communication hub. We built this, I mentioned already, on our Moodle platform. The adjunct faculty have become more engaged in the discussion and access of resources as well, and we've received a lot of positive informal feedback about the social learning community and the resources that are available. So certainly looking to leverage some of these tools on our own, and have had some good success with it. Like the others, there's ongoing communication and implementation tasks that need to be a part of that. We've talked a lot about learning and development, but there are also a number of other elements of the employment life cycle where social learning can have an impact. Certainly in recruiting, onboarding, and employee performance management in general. And there's also a case study from Miller Coors that I'll make available to you and just kind of briefly summarize here. Miller Coors was, realized that it was struggling to retain female salespeople. So this is an onboarding case study, and the company turned to social tools to turn this trend around. And they used a proprietary vendor-based system from one of their vendors that they worked with. But they wanted to make the far-flung female sales reps feel less isolated and more a part of a cohesive team. But their workers were spread across the country, often on the road and often working odd hours. So they decided to provide mentors to some of the saleswomen, connecting them through a social enterprise software platform. Like I mentioned, was a proprietary platform. The software let the mentors and workers connect in one-on-one or in groups. It also enabled people to share documents and post comments. And it also matched workers with mentors who have experience with issues the workers were dealing with. So the mentors were presented, the workers were presented with mentors, but also could connect with other mentors that had expertise in similar situations that the workers were dealing with. The company launched a 6-month Women of Sales mentoring program that had 45 sales representatives split into 3 groups of 15. Each groups had mentors that led those groups, as I had described. Members of the group use the software to connect with one another, discuss topics such as developing a personal brand and or work-life balance, to share documents or articles, and a variety of discussion threads were taking place. What they found early on is that there was a 1.85% decrease in turnover from the 6 months prior to this initiative being kicked off. And anyone that's in recruiting, even though 1.85% doesn't sound like a lot, anyone that's in recruiting can share the potential monetary impact that has on an organization regarding the successful onboarding of employees and compared to having to continuously refresh your employee and your talent pool. So that's an example of something outside of specific training and development. So regardless of what you call it or how you categorize it, where do you see some opportunities for incorporating social learning into your organization or with your clients at this point, based on what we've looked at today? I'd love to get your feedback in the text chat, and certainly feedback as well regarding any new ideas that have come as a result of today's. And I'm going to just scroll the text chat here as you guys continue to chat. See if there's anything that I missed. See, there's some conversation about Yammer, which we'll touch on in just a second. And Sean, I'm not super familiar with IBM Connections, so that's something you'd have to check out yourself, and I do provide a link to that. And there are also some things, I know it's a separate program or solution, so I know it's not as robust, but I know there are some Lotus Notes elements or new features in Lotus Notes over the last couple of years that include social learning and profiles especially. And Mary, thanks for sharing your experience. So yeah, part of what you need to consider is that, does there need to be 100% participation? If there's not, is that a failure regarding the case study that Mary was referencing in her experience? What are your initiatives and goals for that sustainability, and how long does it need to be sustainable for? If it's something that is going to be something that's a part of the company culture from that point forward, certainly you want to use all of the same platforms and initiatives and approaches that you use for other company initiatives as well. And thanks for sharing, everyone, what some of your thoughts are regarding social learning and how you might use it moving forward. So we've got about 5 minutes before we finish up. I just want to touch on, before we're done actually, just want to touch on a few things. We've really already hit on some of the implementation considerations around need, organizational alignment, creating a business case, and considering adoption methods, and those adoption methods were really focused on the implementation from the standpoint of not only how are you gonna get people started, but how are you gonna sustain their their involvement and sustain the impact. And I appreciate you guys sharing in the text chat your experiences with implementations and existing experiences with social learning. And as with any new initiative, certainly a number of other things to consider regarding the organization overall, how people are going to interact, how people are going to engage with the solution, and how it becomes a part of the organization and not just an add-on or something that is new and shiny but then goes away shortly after. And I'm not going to go into details in any of these. A number of these we hit on in some of the case studies, but just wanted to note these on screens as other implementation considerations. Another thought, kind of a little bit more focused on as training and performance improvement professionals, some of the ways in which we might think a little differently about our roles in these environments. And so this is an infographic or a graphic that just kind of depicts the changing role of trainers more to community managers and curators compared to stand-up instructors or e-learning course developers, and just some of the additional things which may fit into the training and development or performance improvement role as the the technology, the solutions, the strategies for training and development, onboarding, employee engagement continue to evolve. And I purposely didn't focus on technologies as a part of today's session because there are so many out there now, and you really shouldn't start an initiative with a technology as a driver. So certainly technology has a big impact on your ultimate solution, but shouldn't be something that is a primary purpose or a primary driver initially. Obviously, you need to retrofit anything that you're doing to the technology that's available to you. But many social learning features are now built into enterprise system and learning management systems, and there are others that are built for enterprise application as well as more publicly available tools that are also used with employees. So Waggle and Yammer are two, or Yammer is one that was mentioned that's an enterprise. Those are two enterprise applications that are more publicly available, and then, or I'm sorry, two enterprise applications that were built specifically for enterprise social learning outside of the enterprise systems or learning management systems. And then YouTube and Wikispaces are two that are publicly available tools that are also used for employee engagement and social learning. So I have links out to a number of these as well in the resources. And we'll actually move there now as a part of wrapping up today's session. And as I'll share my contact information one last time. And would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on social learning initiatives that you're undertaking. And we'll pause just briefly here to let Diane add anything that she wants to add regarding today's session or TrainingPros, and then we'll have a brief survey that we'll go to wrap up today, and appreciate you guys sticking around for that and giving us some feedback on today.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can hear me now. Hopefully you can. Okay, great. Yeah. So I'm not sure what you really all heard about TrainingPros, but also I am also very, very interested in the whole social learning collaboration space piece as well. And so if you'd like to explore more opportunities there with me as well, I don't know if my contact information is up there. I certainly can put it in the chat box as well. And again, one final thing about TrainingPros is we are certainly willing, able, and ready to help all of you explore this aspect as well, or if you're looking to move into other aspects of the e-learning space, certainly give us a call, and we're here to help you with your short-term contractual learning and development needs.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, and you can certainly type your contact information into the text chat. And now I'd like everyone to, if you can, please give us some feedback on today's session. I'd love to hear, in addition, some of the other topics that you may be interested in regarding learning technologies and emerging learning technologies especially. And thank you again for joining today. And the resources are at the bottom right of the screen next to the text chat, so you can scroll through those. We'll leave the room open for a little till a little after 4, and make sure that you have access to those resources, and those resources will also be available as part of the recording. When you're giving us your feedback in the polls, you do not need to submit. Your selection will be recorded immediately upon selecting one of the options, and you can change your options as well at any time. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day, and
Thank you.